Hello and welcome back to the Panic Attack coaching channel with me, Tom, your Panic Attack coach. So in this video, I want to give you some top tips for what to do if you experience a panic attack. We've talked so much about why panic attacks happen, and we will be talking about overcoming panic attacks generally, but I think it would be valuable and only fair to give you some helpful suggestions of how you can minimize panic during a panic attack, shorten your panic attack, and kind of give you more confidence around panic. So this video is going to be 5 suggestions for how you can use panic attacks to push you closer to recovery. Because what's important to remember is just because you have a panic attack, it doesn't mean you're further away from getting better. Think about if it snows in March, it doesn't mean spring isn't coming. So a panic attack doesn't send you further away from recovery. In fact, sometimes once you have a better understanding of panic attacks themselves can actually help support your core beliefs that things are okay and things will get better. It gives us evidence to back up our truths that we talked about in the previous video. So panic attacks aren't necessarily a bad thing during recovery. I wouldn't say they're good because they're horrible, but you can definitely find positives in them. So let's talk about how you can help yourself during a panic attack, because they do happen and you're not going to recover overnight. So I want to help you if you do have a panic attack. Just going to have a sip of coffee. Okay, so first thing I want to say is when you start having a panic attack or you think you might be having one, first thing I want you to think about is your thoughts. Your thoughts can be observed. Your conscious mind can observe the thoughts that arise, because in a panic attack, thoughts arise spontaneously and quickly and repetitively. They come out of nowhere. What's going on? Is that my heart? Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I'm dying. These thoughts they basically come without us evoking them or without warning. So what's really helpful is to start practicing observing. So thoughts can come and they can go without us necessarily doing anything. We can just watch them. So it's really helpful to start identifying certain thoughts that happen during panic attacks, because the experience can be so overwhelming that sometimes we can have panic attacks quite regularly without really understanding what's at the heart of it. What is it that's really scaring us? Like, what is perpetuating this panic cycle? And there's often clues in these fleeting thoughts that we have, and it can be a good opportunity during a panic attack to really check out these thoughts and think, what are these core beliefs that I need to change? What sensations are truly terrifying? What do I think is actually going to happen? What catastrophic thoughts lead to waves of fear? And by understanding this and really gaining more insight, we can direct our recovery more specifically to these catastrophic thoughts and beliefs. So that's a benefit of watching your thoughts. And also, it helps to separate yourself from the experience a little bit. When we feel like we are our thoughts and it's all in our own heads and everything, it can make us feel like we're getting a bit depersonalized. We can feel derealization. It can be overwhelming. So being able to just like step a little bit back mentally and observe what's going on can give us some comfort. So that's first. So second is being mindful of our breath. So breathing is very powerful. You'll probably know about all kinds of meditations and mindfulness activities that focus on the breath. The breath is quite grounding, and breathing has a very intimate relationship with fear. So we've talked about how during a panic attack, our breathing rate often increases and we hyperventilate. Hyperventilation means we're breathing in more oxygen than we need, breathing out more carbon dioxide than we should. There's no danger of this, but it can give rise to feelings like dizziness, pins and needles, numbness. So if we can reverse our breathing a little bit during panic, we can reverse some of these sensations. And the key thing is reversing that hyperventilation process. And to reverse it, we need to breathe slower. Now, a lot of people advise deep breathing. I don't think that's the right way, because deep breathing breathes in a lot of oxygen, and we've already got more than enough oxygen because we're hyperventilating. So if anything, we don't need to take deeper breaths. We just need to slow the breathing down. So slow breathing has an additional benefit in that it activates what is known as the parasympathetic nervous system. That word is kind of just used to imply the opposite of the sympathetic nervous system. And the sympathetic nervous system is the response that involves adrenaline. So the fear response basically works through our sympathetic nervous system. So anything that activates the parasympathetic nervous system is basically the antidote to the fear response. So slow breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system. So in effect, breathing slowly counteracts the panic response and panic itself. So what I would recommend is, if you're feeling like a panic attack might be like stirring inside, or you're in one, try and slow down your breath. And what's really helpful is to try and make sure your out breath is longer than your in breath. So a technique that's often used, and you can vary the times here, is you breathe in, let's say for 4 seconds, you then hold your breath for 5 seconds, and then you breathe out for 7 seconds. That makes sure that you're always breathing out more than you're breathing in. And actually that's what people used to do with paper bags. That's not a safe thing to do anymore. I don't think it ever was, but you can mimic the technique of using a paper bag by doing that technique where you breathe out more than you breathe in, and that can be directly calming. Also, focusing on our breath rather than our thoughts and other sensations can also help distract and relax us too, so it has an added benefit there. So another thing you can try is positive imagery. So sometimes we just need to kind of get out of our minds and bodies and picture ourselves somewhere else. And this can be a very valuable technique. And a metaphor that I often used when I experienced panic attacks, and which really helped me, was a metaphor of a boat on the sea or ocean. So imagine that you're sat in a boat and you're securely you're in the boat securely. The boat cannot capsize. You're safe, okay? But there are waves in the ocean, and when the waves come, your boat will ride the wave, and the wave will pass under the boat, and then the wave will pass. And the waves will keep coming because you're in the ocean. This is normal. And sometimes the waves are bigger than other times, but when they're bigger, the boat just lifts up higher, and you're always okay, but the waves still come. So when we're going through a panic attack, the waves of panic are very similar to the waves on the ocean. We can feel them coming. They hit us. We feel that fear and panic, and then over time they will pass. And similarly to being on the ocean, we have to have the right relationship with these waves of fear that we experience during panic. If you're on the boat, it wouldn't make much sense to try and stop the wave coming, because you couldn't. The more you try, the chances are you'll just get wet. Like if you try to like stick your oars in the wave as it approaches, it'll probably just splash up all over your face. You can't stop the power of the ocean. If that wave's coming, it's coming, regardless of what we want. You can't get out the way, you can't run away, it's just coming. So it's much better to just accept that the wave's coming, make sure you're holding on, and let the wave go underneath your boat and just ride it out. So panic attacks are much the same. When this fear is coming, trying to fight that fear, if anything, makes it more intense. Trying to run away from that fear isn't really possible either, because fear just follows us everywhere. So just like on a boat, when you're in a panic, you need to imagine that fear like a wave and accept it accept that it's coming. Accepting doesn't mean approving. We don't want it there, but we can accept that it's coming and we can't do anything about it. So we can allow it to come, we can allow it to come underneath our bodies, permeate our bodies, knowing that it's going to come out the other side. And we might have multiple waves of fear. It will come, pass through and go. And as we feel more safe with that fear passing through us, we'll notice that these waves start to get a little bit smaller. And as they get smaller, we'll become more confident that we're going to be okay. And eventually the waves of fear will diminish and we'll be out of our panic attack. And over time, what we'll notice with our fear generally is our overall, like the ocean in which our boat is in our whole life, will become less choppy, like there'll be less waves. So while at the moment every day feels like a series of very big waves, what we'll find is the landscape changes and the waves will get smaller and less frequent, and we'll feel much more comfortable on our boats. So being mindful, imagining yourself in this situation can be really helpful. And you can actually combine this with the previous technique I talked about. So while you're thinking about being on the boat with waves coming underneath, you can also make sure you're breathing slowly, so you can focus more on the out breath. And by combining those techniques, it can be quite a powerful strategy for dealing with panic. So we've talked about observing your thoughts, being mindful of your breath, and also positive imagery. So the fourth thing is being mindful of your surroundings. So another technique you can try is, rather than focusing on what's going on inside your body and what's going on inside your mind, it might be helpful to focus on what's going on around you. This can help just shift our attention away from things that are fueling our fear to things that are not. So a really classic technique, which is valuable, is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique. This involves looking for 5 things around you. So for me, I can see a window, a light, my mug of coffee, a computer. So you identify mentally things you can see around you. And then once you've done that, you move on to 4 things you can hear. So maybe you can hear the birds outside, maybe you can hear people talking, traffic. You just try and identify and really listen for those 4 things. Next, you're going to look for or notice 3 things that you can touch. So potentially you can touch your clothing, you can feel yourself sat on the chair, might be able to feel your feet in your shoes or the ground beneath your feet, or maybe even the air on your face. Try and really imagine the feeling of that. After you imagine the feelings, you're going to try and think of 2 things that you can smell. So you might not be able to smell 2 things. You might be able to smell like the scent of fear, your sweat, and that's okay. You might be able to smell your aftershave, you might be able to smell someone else's perfume or a smell from outside. Try and find 2 things that you can smell. And if you can't find anything for any of these things, just imagine something that you'd like to smell and really try and keep it in your mind's eye. And then for the 1 thing, it's 1 thing that you can taste. So maybe you've had lunch recently, maybe you had breakfast, maybe you've brushed your teeth. See if you can taste anything. And if you can't, what would you like to taste? So that's the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique. 5 things we can see, 4 things we can hear, 3 things we can touch, 2 things that we can smell, and 1 thing that we can taste. And that just helps shift our focus from within our body to outside, which helps us de-escalate this catastrophic spiral that we're going through. So 4 techniques so far. So the 5th one is not so much a technique, but it's important to put in here because this is a really key one for overcoming panic in the future. So the 5th thing is fight the impulse to escape. Now, this is really tricky because when we're experiencing fear and we're starting to have a panic attack, our instinct is to run away, and that's our fear response. If we feel like we're in a threatening position, our fear response says, get out of there because you don't want to come to harm. So it's actually a very strong instinct. We have a very strong impulse to get out. And if you're somebody who's experiencing agoraphobia, this could involve, I don't know, being on a train and you have this impulse that you need to like get out at the next station. You don't want to stay sitting in the train or on a bus, or you're in the cinema and you have this feeling like you've got to run out the door. And that impulse is so strong that it can feel like the only safe thing to do is to get out. And you probably can think about why this is a problem. Remember in a previous video, I talked about how our behaviors can reinforce certain beliefs. And when we escape a situation which we're having a panic attack in, what it says to us is, if I didn't get out, something terrible would have happened. I wouldn't have coped. I might have died. I might have collapsed. It reinforces the idea that you cannot cope, and that fuels panic. It gives panic a stronger influence over you. What we need to do is overcome panic, which means we need to tell ourselves, despite panic, I'm not going to let it beat me. I'm not going to do what it wants me to do. So what's really important during a panic attack is to stay where you are. Obviously within reason. If you're in the middle of the road, get out of the road. But if you're in a cinema and you're starting to have a panic attack, resist the urge to get out. Sit there, and if you can, and you can do it, ride out that feeling. Because we know, truth number 3, every panic attack ends. Even if you stay in that situation, you will not always, like, you're not going to indefinitely have a panic attack. It will come to an end. And what's so powerful is, if you can stay there and that panic attack ends, it will tell you something really important. It will tell you panic attacks end. Truth number 3, evidence for truth number 3. It will also reinforce the idea that panic attacks are not dangerous. That second truth. So it's really powerful to have a panic attack and stay where you are and cope with it. So this is one of these weird paradoxes where actually having a panic attack in some ways can be helpful in your path to recovery, because it gives you that opportunity to change your unhelpful behaviors into helpful ones. And staying where you are, avoiding escape, is a key reinforcer of a positive behavior. So that one's tricky, but it's really important, and it will be very difficult, but you can do it. You have choice. However scared you are, you have choice, and you can choose to remain. And I really, really encourage you to choose to remain. So we've talked about 5 things. So number 1, observe your thoughts. Distance yourself from your thoughts. You are not your thoughts. Your thoughts happen and you can see them. They will come and go. Observe what they are. What are the things that you're scared about? What fuels this panic cycle? Observe your thoughts. Number 2, be mindful of your breath. Take advantage of the calming effects of your breathing. Slow your breathing down and try and breathe longer out than you do in. Remember, shifting your focus, your breath also helps shift it away from uncomfortable sensations and potential catastrophic thoughts. Number 3, try positive imagery. Imagine you're on a boat in the ocean and the waves are passing beneath your boat. Imagine fear as waves. Okay, that's the 3rd one. The 4th one, be mindful of what's around you. So this is the technique, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique. Shifting your focus onto things you can see, things you can hear, things you can touch, things you can smell, and things you can taste. Just shifting that focus away from your panic to what's going on around you. And this is quite a good technique if you're somebody who feels like they become kind of derealization during a panic attack, where you kind of start feeling like you're losing touch with like reality. It's not a sign you're going crazy, but this technique can help you kind of refocus and feel like you're here again. And then the final thing we talked about, do not escape. Fight that urge to run, because running reinforces the idea that there's a threat. There is no threat. You are safe. Stay where you are, and you will learn powerful truths. The truth that panic attacks end and panic attacks are not dangerous. And remember, all the feelings you have are normal. Together, they're the three truths. And sometimes having a panic attack can help you realize those. So if you have a panic attacks, even during the recovery, it's okay. Rome wasn't built in a day. You're not going to go from 0 to 100 in a matter of hours. It's completely normal to continue to have some panic attacks. They do not suggest you're getting further away from recovery. Remember, even if it snows in March, spring is still around the corner. So if panic attacks do happen, use them to your advantage. Become a scientist. Really try and work out what's happening. Use what we've learned and apply it to what's going on. Think through the panic cycle as it's going, and it will really help you understand and believe what we're saying. So I really hope you found this helpful. Please do listen to this again and again to reinforce the ideas around panic. What we're going to move on to now in the next video is really the strategies outside of a panic attack to help overcome panic, because that's where all the kind of the key work going to be happening. It's changing the things we do and the way we think so that panic attacks are less likely to happen. And over time, what we'll find is panic attacks become much less frequent, their strength diminishes, and as that happens, the prison in which we're living, the walls push further and further away, and we have more freedom in our lives. And eventually, what we'll find is that the walls are just going to disappear and we're going to be free and we're not going to have any more panic attacks. So I just wanted to give you these tips for having a panic when you're having a panic attack, but ultimately, you know what we're here for. We're not going to have any panic attacks. So this video will become redundant hopefully very soon. But until that time, please use it. Please enjoy it. If you did like it, please subscribe to my channel, like the video, add any comments below the video. If you want to contact me more directly, you can email me at panic.coaching@gmail.com. You can also check out my website where I offer coaching. If you would like to have help directly from me, please do contact me through my website, www.panic-coaching.com. Really good to see you, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.